In this video, we're going to talk about the select case block in Microsoft Visual Basic. The select case block involves evaluating an expression and then executing a block of code if that expression is true. The select case block is very similar to an if-then statement, but allows for multiple versions of an expression to be evaluated at one time, as opposed to in the if-then statement, where things tend to get a lot more confusing when you're trying to evaluate several different versions of an expression. But the best way for me to show you what I'm talking about is to show you the code. So let's talk about the application here first. In this application, we have a grade text box and a button for calculating a proper certificate. What the user has to do for this application is enter a grade and then click the calculate certificate button. This will result in the user getting back a certificate that correlates with the grade that they entered. So let's take a look at the code. So right now all we have is the event handler for the button that will execute what we put in this code. So the first thing we want to do is set up a variable for our grade. So we'll call this variable grade to keep things simple, and we'll set it as a string. Now if we look at our application here, we can see that grade is called txt grade. And when we go back to the code, we can say grade equals txt, and it comes up. We'll use certificate later, but it comes up txt grade, and we want to set this to the text of that box. So now we have our first variable, and we can start our select case block. We start this by writing select, and we see that the letters have already turned blue, and we want to hit tab twice. And now we have everything set up. So what we want to do now is, it says variable name here, so this is going to be what has to be evaluated throughout the block. So what do we want to be evaluated but grade? So we have to enter grade here, and we have to set up the different situations for that grade will occur in the block. So the first thing we want is if grade is equal to A. So if grade is equal to A, we're going to say that our certificate text is equal to honorable mention. And let's actually get rid of this case else for now. We'll come back to that and see how that works. Okay, next we're going to say case B. We're going to say txt certificate dot text equals principals list. And we'll throw one more case in to show what's going on, and we'll call it txt, we'll call it case C, and we'll then make the certificate equal to satisfactory achievement. And then we're going to end our block. Oh, it's already ended for us because we hit tab twice when we entered select, and Visual Studio set everything up for us. So all we have to do is bring that up. So now we have a select case block written out. What this is saying is that based on the grade variable, if grade is equal to A is true, then we're going to execute this line of code. If grade is equal to B is true, we're going to execute this line of code. If grade is equal to C is true, then we're going to execute this line of code. So now let's debug the program and see what happens. Okay, so this is actually what we were working with on a different tutorial. So let's quickly here, we're going to change the properties. This is a good thing also. We want our startup form to be the select case. So what I did here was I went into my project's name, select case block, and I went properties. So now this says select case. So when I go back to my code, I can hit debug, and what comes up with our application here. So the first thing we want to do is enter the letter A. Now what we're not going over in this tutorial is what happens if you enter a lowercase a, lowercase b, things of that nature. That would be for another tutorial down the line. In this one, we're only talking about how the select case block works specifically. So now let's hit our button, and we see we get honorable mention. So that's a good sign. And now let's hit B, and we get principals list. Now let's hit C, and we get satisfactory achievement. Great. So now let's talk about something that happens in the if-then statement, but isn't in the select case block right now. We actually had it there before, but we deleted it for now. It's the if, then, and then we have else. In select case, we also have an else. Because now if we enter letter D, and we hit this, we get nothing. We get what was there before, but nothing has happened for case D. So this is an issue we have if a grade was to be entered that wasn't in this block of code. So let's end our application running, and let's delete and select for now. And now Visual Studio is getting upset here because we've deleted and select. But we'll put that back. For now, we're going to write case else. You see what I did? I started writing else first, and it still came up with the IntelliSense feature of Visual Studio, where it gives you the different things it thinks you might be looking for. So I can just hit tab here, and it sets me up. So now let's say that if it's not a grade of A, B, or C, we're going to make our certificate box say no certificate available, and we're going to end our block. Now when we look at this, we debug, we enter a grade, and we hit calculate, still works. So now let's try entering a D. No certificate available. So it worked for us. So now let's just talk about for a second what happened here. Just to go over everything one more time. We want to evaluate what a user input as a grade and what certificate they would get based on that input. So instead of doing a crazy if-then statement involving a bunch of different situations that wouldn't be that long in this, but you can see the potential of it getting long. Instead of doing that, we use the select case block, which keeps things nice and short and makes it easy to read. So we said select case, and we were using the grade variable. The first thing we said again was if grade is equal to A, case A, we were going to have this happen. Then this for B, this for C. And then we're going to say if anything else was entered but A, B, or C, we were going to get no certificate available. So that is pretty much how a select case block works. And we're going to do one more thing here, another feature of Visual Basic that we've used in other tutorials. We're going to step into our code by either going and hitting F8 or doing what I just did. So what we're going to do is we're going to enter an A, and we know it should say honorable mention. So when we hit this, it brings us line by line through the code and gives us a really nice feature of Visual Studio. Now to get to the next line, we hit F8, and this is initializing the grade variable, and then we enter the select case block. So if we look up here, we can see that grade is being set to what was in here, and this is A, so grade is A. And even if we go down here, grade is A. So now if we go through, it'll start going into the block, and it should stop at the first one. And that's what it did. So it's setting the certificate to equal this. So if we hit another line, it should drop out of the select case. And it's a nice feature when we can see this happening directly. So now if we hover over this, we can see that certificate is going to equal honorable mention. So now if we hit F8 one more time, we go to the end of the code, and then we step out of the code. So now let's see the code go all the way down. We'll enter a D, click calculate proper certificate, and then we'll hit F8 again. And we'll see grade is equal to D. It's also saying this down here. And we'll go through. And what does it do? It jumps over A, B, and C and goes right to K cells, where it's equal. Well, it says this right now because we haven't reached that line of the code. We hit that, then we go down there after this line has been executed, and we get no certificate available, which is nice to see. We're at end select, we end the sub, and we end the application. This tutorial has been on the select case block. I hope you've learned something from this tutorial, and you'll be able to watch our other videos on this website and come back for many more in the future. Thank you.